Picture a battlefield after the storm has passed. The ground is a churned ruin of mud and blood, littered with the splintered remains of shields and snapped spear shafts. The air is thick with the iron tang of death and the groans of the dying. This devastating landscape isn't the work of random savagery or mindless fury. This is engineering. Every broken body, every shattered shield is a testament to a specific tool, a piece of terrifyingly effective design forged for one purpose: conquest. The Vikings didn't just overwhelm their enemies with numbers, they dismantled them with superior technology. Their weapons were instruments designed to break not just bones and steel, but the will to fight. Today, we are unlocking the blood-soaked secrets of their arsenal. We will rank the 5 deadliest instruments of the Viking Age, judged on 3 brutal metrics: sheer battlefield devastation, ingenious and terrifying design, and their power to shatter an enemy's morale before the final blow even lands. Which tool of terror truly reigns supreme? Let's find out. Our countdown begins not with a thunderous clash of swords, but with a sound far more unnerving. A volley of whispers cutting through the air, followed by a chorus of sudden, agonized screams. This is the overture to a Viking raid performed by the barbed spear. To the untrained eye, it's just a simple, slender spearhead. But look closer, and you see its sadistic genius. Forged directly into its neck are 2, sometimes more, rear-facing barbs. They are like the fangs of a viper, designed for one-way travel. Deceptively simple, utterly cruel, it was the perfect opening move in the Viking playbook of terror. Imagine yourself as a Saxon furdman, a farmer levied for war, standing shoulder to shoulder in a shield wall. The horns have sounded across the misty field. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. Then, on the horizon, the Viking line surges forward and the sky darkens. A cloud of these slender spears arcs towards you. They aren't designed for clean, honorable kills. Their primary function is biomechanical cruelty. The smooth, narrow head slides into an unprotected leg, a thrusting arm, or even the linden wood of your shield with sickening, effortless ease. The initial wound is often minor, a deep puncture. The real terror, the weapon's true purpose, is activated the moment you try to remove it. Those barbs, those tiny fishhooks of forged steel, now perform their intended function. They catch on flesh, muscle, and sinew. To pull the spear out is not to treat the wound, but to inflict a second, far more grievous one. It means tearing a massive, ragged channel, turning a simple puncture into a debilitating injury that will almost certainly fester and kill, even if you survive the battle. A man screams, dropping his shield to clutch a leg that is now pumping blood, creating a fatal gap in the wall. A spear lodged in a shield renders it impossibly unwieldy, a heavy, cumbersome liability that throws its user off balance. A Viking smith could produce dozens of these heads in a single day, meaning every raider could carry several. It was cheap, it was disposable, and its sole purpose was to cause widespread chaos, pain, and bleeding before the primary battle lines even met. It was the first wave of a calculated psychological assault. Next, we evolved from a simple, cruel missile to a weapon of profound tactical genius: the winged spear. At first glance, the 2 prominent metal wings, or lugs sitting just behind the broad leaf-shaped blade, might seem purely ornamental, a blacksmith's flourish. This assumption would be a fatal mistake. Those wings were a revolutionary piece of military hardware that transformed a simple stabbing weapon into the Swiss army knife of the Viking battlefield. It was an elegant solution to the single greatest tactical problem of the era: how to break the shield wall. The shield wall was the bedrock of Dark Age warfare, a locked, overlapping wall of wood, leather, and steel. It was a fortress on the move, seemingly impenetrable to frontal assault. The winged spear was the key designed to unlock it. A skilled Viking warrior would not aim for the shield itself. Instead, he would thrust his spear over an enemy's shield. As the enemy instinctively flinched back, the Viking would give a sharp, powerful tug. The wings would hook onto the shield's upper rim. Using the long spear shaft as a lever, the Viking could, in one brutal leveraging motion, wrench the shield violently downwards or sideways, exposing the man hiding behind it for a fatal, unprotected split second. That was all his battle brother, waiting with an axe or sword, would ever need. It was a perfectly coordinated tactic of can opener and kill stroke. But the genius of its design didn't end there. Those same wings served a secondary purpose. They prevented the spear from penetrating too deeply into an opponent's body. A common problem with simple spears was that they could get stuck in a foe, forcing the warrior to abandon his primary weapon in the heat of battle. The wings acted as a stopper, allowing for a devastating thrust, followed by a quick, clean retrieval. Against cavalry, it was equally formidable. The wings could be used to hook a rider's ankle and physically yank him from the saddle, or to parry and control an enemy's own weapon shaft. Archaeologists have found spearheads of this type nearly 2 feet long, effectively a short sword mounted on an 8-foot pole. It was a shield breaker, a cavalry stopper, and a devastatingly effective thruster all in one. It was the physical embodiment of the Viking belief that a weapon should be as clever as it is deadly. This weapon is the very soul of the Viking Age. While wealthy lords and jarls might flaunt their expensive pattern-welded swords, the true workhorse of the Norseman, the symbol of his identity as both a farmer and a warrior, was the bearded axe. The iconic beard refers to the distinctively elongated lower edge of the axe head, which drops well below the butt of the haft, creating a wide cutting surface and a pronounced hook. This was not an aesthetic choice. It was a stroke of profound utilitarian genius, born from the dense, unforgiving forests and rugged farmlands of Scandinavia. The beard served 2 crucial battlefield functions. Firstly, it allowed for a very long, sweeping cutting edge on a relatively lightweight and material-efficient axe head. You achieved the slicing potential of a much larger weapon without the extra weight, making it faster and less fatiguing to wield. Secondly, and far more importantly, that lower edge created a perfect hook. Just like the winged spear, the bearded axe was a master of manipulating and defeating shields. A Viking could use the hook to catch the top rim of a shield and jerk it down, exposing his enemy's head and neck. Alternatively, he could hook a leg, pulling his opponent off balance and onto the ground where he could be dispatched. This transformed a simple chopping tool into a versatile grappling weapon, giving the user tactical options far beyond a simple swing. Its greatest strength, however, was its profound accessibility. Every farmer, every homesteader, every man in the Norse world owned an axe. It was an essential tool for felling trees, building homes, and splitting firewood. When the call to raid came, when the promise of silver and glory beckoned, this essential tool was simply taken from the woodpile, its edge honed to a razor sharpness on a whetstone, and carried into battle. While wealthy jarls might possess ceremonial axes, their heads intricately inlaid with silver and copper wire, a piece of deadly status symbol art, the common raider wielded the same deadly profile. It was a truly democratic weapon, the great equalizer on the battlefield. It was a constant, lethal reminder that any Norseman, no matter his station, could be a formidable warrior. We now ascend from the common man's weapon to the treasure of kings. The Viking sword was not just a weapon, it was a legacy, a status symbol, a concentration of wealth so vast it was often equivalent to the price of a large, productive farm. The finest of these, some bearing the legendary, almost mystical smith mark plus V LFBERHT, were forged from crucible steel so pure and with a carbon content so perfectly controlled that the technology to reliably replicate it would not be seen again in Europe for nearly 1,000 years. These were not mere tools, they were technological marvels. A key feature of their design was the fuller, a shallow groove running down the center of the blade, which is often mistakenly and romantically called a blood groove. Its purpose was far more sophisticated. It was an engineering feature designed to reduce the sword's overall weight and improve its balance without sacrificing the blade's structural integrity, making the 3-pound blade feel impossibly fast and alive in the hand. The blades themselves were frequently pattern-welded. Rods of high-carbon steel and low-carbon iron were heated, twisted together like strands of dough, and then hammer-forged into a single billet. This complex process created a weapon with the best of both worlds. The high-carbon steel provided a brutally hard and sharp cutting edge, while the softer iron core gave the sword flexibility, allowing it to absorb the shock of impact against shields and other blades without shattering, a fatal flaw in lesser homogeneous steel swords. In the brutal close-quarters chaos of a shield wall, the sword was the weapon of a duelist. It was faster and more nimble than an axe, with greater reach than a seax knife. It was perfect for lightning-fast thrusts into gaps in the enemy line and for surgical disabling slashes. Its tapered point was expertly designed to pierce the rings of chainmail or to slip past a shield's edge for a fatal strike to the throat or groin. To carry one of these was to wear a neon sign that broadcast your status. I am a person of consequence. I am a leader of men. Come and test my authority at your peril. It was the weapon of champions, the tool for settling duels, and the shining banner that led the charge. And now we arrive at the apex, the undisputed king of Viking mayhem. The weapon so devastatingly effective and visually terrifying that it became legendary even in its own time. The Danish great axe. Forget everything you think you know about axes. This was not a tool. This was a monster forged for a single purpose: absolute annihilation. Imagine a wide, asymmetrical crescent moon of thin, hammer-welded steel, its cutting edge sometimes a foot or more from tip to tip, mounted on a long two-handed haft of ash or oak that could reach a man's shoulder. The brilliance of its design was in its understanding of physics. The head itself weighed only 2 to 4 pounds, deceptively light for its size. But mounted on that long 5-foot lever, simple physics transformed it into a guillotine. It was a weapon that required space, strength, and total commitment. A warrior wielding it, like the legendary Anglo-Saxon Huskarls who adopted it, could not carry a shield. His defense was the sheer, terrifying bubble of death his weapon projected around him. The long handle kept swordsmen and spearmen well outside their effective striking distance. Once that massive, whistling arc began, there was no stopping it. There was only the dreadful whoosh of the air being split, followed by a sound of sickening final impact, a wet crunch that echoed across the battlefield. It didn't just break shields, it annihilated them, cleaving through inches of wood, leather, and the arm holding it in a single catastrophic blow. It could shear through a steel helmet and the skull beneath, as if they weren't there. At the pivotal Battle of Hastings in 1066, the chronicles tell us that the armoured Norman knights on their powerful war horses were utterly terrified of the Anglo-Saxon Huskarls wielding these weapons, which were reported to be able to decapitate a horse, let alone its rider, with one strike. A single skilled man with a Danish axe could carve a hole in a shield wall, creating a bloody doorway for his comrades to pour through. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a morale-breaking, line-shattering event. Brutal, surprisingly elegant in its brutal physics, and the absolute undisputed apex of Viking weapon engineering. 5 weapons, 5 masterclasses in brutal, efficient design, from the insidious barbed spear that began the symphony of screams, to the tactical winged spear that dismantled defenses with leverage and guile, the humble bearded axe that armed an entire people, the noble sword that defined leadership and status, and finally, the great axe that single-handedly ended entire battles. The arsenal of the Viking was never about random, brutish savagery. It was a calculated system of maximum efficiency, maximum terror, and a profound, often overlooked engineering intelligence. So the next time you hear someone describe the Vikings as mindless brutes in horned helmets, you can tell them the truth. You can tell them that their reputation for ferocity was well earned. Not because of blind rage, but because they were among the most innovative and calculating warriors of their time. The greatest weapon the Vikings ever truly possessed wasn't the cold steel in their hands. It was the cold, calculating genius that forged it. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Viking arsenal, smash the like button with the force of a Dane axe, and subscribe for more journeys into the brutal and brilliant past. Tell us in the comments which of these terror tools you'd want to carry into the shield wall. And be sure to ring that notification bell so Valhalla finds you informed and ready when our next saga is released. Skål.